We've all witnessed illustrations of leadership, whether this was in the movies or headlines about what a formal leader has done, with whom, and where. We've witnessed the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. But how much time have we spent thinking about our own leadership? And if we have reflected on it, how do we know how we're doing? Today on the Communicative Leader, first things first, am I doing it? And secondly, am I doing it well? Hello and welcome to the Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Neill Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On the Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. Questions I hear often. Am I a leader? How do I know if others see me as a leader? Am I doing it well? Am I doing it right? Well, as we know, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to leading. There isn't necessarily a right way to do it, though there are many wrong ways, which we will mention today and dive headfirst into in future episodes. You might have heard of certain styles or approaches to leadership, like transformational leadership or democratic leadership, for example. But at the end of the day, it really boils down to authenticity. Let's explore this a bit further. I may be really drawn to transformational leaders, for example. I might have read some books, even read some research literature that shows transformational leaders tend to inspire certain positive outcomes. Or perhaps I'm really intrigued by specific desirable outcomes of autocratic leaders. Sure, that may sound great and be very, very enticing. But here's the thing, my friends. If I pull up a list of characteristics of transformational leaders or autocratic leaders or democratic leaders or fill in the blank type of leader, if these communicative traits and behaviors are not those that I display naturally, I'm going to miss the mark. I'm going to feel like it's a performance, and it's going to feel like it's lacking authenticity. Here's the thing. Who wants to be led by an actor? An actor, by definition, is playing the role of a specific character. No, my friends, we don't want an actor. We want a real person. We want a real person who is trying, who is thoughtful, who is engaged, and who knows us. What do employees want from us? Or family members, for that matter, or our friends, the community? They want us to be genuine. They want us to be adept communicators. Those who are mindful and intentional with language, who are inclusive, who are articulate. How do we do those things? How do we demonstrate that intention and that presence and that other-oriented focus? Communicating verbally and non-verbally in ways that reveal our commitment to being respectful, responsible, and safe. Well, no duh, right? It's totally fine if you're rolling your eyes at me right now. I get it. But hang with me a bit. Okay, respectful? Yeah, of course. Responsible? Naturally. Safe? No-brainer. I am not going to argue with you. These three principles, they are simple, they are accessible, and they don't take a whole lot of imagination. But here's the thing. Once we really reflect on these behaviors and what they entail, we might recognize that maybe these pillars of leadership aren't ones that are always enacted by leaders. I'm sure we've all been under the direction of a leader who is not always responsible, whether with resources, decision-making, colleagues' feelings, or those who are not always respectful, right? Maybe exclusive when using antiquated language, which is never okay. And safe. Maybe on the surface, this one is the hardest to grapple with. You might be thinking, safe, I haven't had a manager who makes me feel unsafe. Well, safe, my friends, also includes feeling protected. Safe means we believe that our manager will stick up for us, will handle our suggestions and our ideas with care, and will shield us from backlash when they see fit. Also under safe, well, unfortunately, I am sure that we have some listeners out there who've been the target of their managers or another organizational leader's unwanted sexual advances. So, see where we're going with this? Well, communicating verbally and non-verbally in ways that are respectful, responsible, and safe sounds like pretty much the easiest ask ever. we can pretty quickly call our experiences and realize there are a number of leaders out there, formal leaders, elected leaders, opinion leaders, who are not actually leading by these principles. Well, at least not well or ethically or with a communicative focus. So respectful, responsible, and safe. Where did I get these from? Where did these 3 pillars stem from? Well, let me tell you, these came from my child's 2nd grade orientation presentation. You heard that right. I was sitting in a comically tiny seat, struck by the power of these 3 foci. I found myself thinking about these 3 foci on and off for days. I was getting groceries and find myself considering what respectful leadership looked like. I went for a walk and was trying to parcel out characteristics of responsible leadership and safe. Well, I spent a lot of time on this one. Once I got over the fact that safe for adults and leaders looks a little different than 2nd graders not running with scissors, I started to see this episode come into focus. We're going to consider leadership through these 3 principles. Again, respectful, responsible, and safe. And then we'll dive into some checks to make sure that we're being reflective and adaptive leaders as well. What I'd like to do first, however, is give us some structure to frame where we can go. Where we can go individually as a communicative leader, where we can take our team or our organization as a communicative leader who is respectful, responsible, and safe. What's that, you ask? What is this frame, this structure? Well, let me tell you. When we have clear expectations in place for our team, or our family, or our community group, or our PTO, for example, these boundaries act as both a safety net and a springboard. Wait a minute. How do we create an environment that is simultaneously nurturing and responsive to our needs, while also allowing us to grow and catapult to higher levels of achievement? Clear expectations coupled with a commitment to leadership. All right, I have your attention now, I can tell. So now we're going to look at some sample expectations. We're going to look at 4 specific support beams for creating the environment you want. Then we're going to look at what respectful, responsible, and safe leaders look like in this intentional, supportive, and growth-focused environment. Something else? With some reflection and commitment to communicating consistently, this is very, very achievable. You've got this. Support beam number 1. Use positive strategies to help develop desired behaviors. What does this look like? We've talked before about a previous university president who would describe our university as a heads-up campus. Not only did he say this, but he enacted it. He smiled. He stopped to pose for selfies with students, with faculty, with parents. He gave his email out to everyone, all students and all parents at orientation, and was genuine in telling them to reach out if they had questions or concerns. That rubs off. Faculty and staff learn this expectation when they're onboarded as well. Students are exposed to it from their first visit. This same university president would also respond to requests to attend undergrad leadership courses to talk about his experiences, and on numerous occasions allowed students to observe and interview him for their term project. If cultivating a friendly, open, helpful environment is important to you, then we can use our own behavior as this positive source of inspiration and role modeling. Support beam number 2. Focus on changing the environment in ways that support positive behavior and in ways that discourage negative behavior. Making changes that support positive behavior and discouraging negative behavior, well, this can be a lot of fun. It encourages us to take a step back so we can think about our work environment, or even just small aspects of our work environment, and figuring out which are more conducive to positive behaviors, and at the same time, how do we then discourage or tamper down on those discouraged or negative behaviors. This support beam makes me think about how my meeting schedules have shifted in my department over the years. When I first joined the organization, we had all staff meetings on Fridays. Generally, this is a good time to get together. As those of you who are familiar with the academic campuses, Friday afternoons tend to be fairly quiet. But that also made it all the harder to head in for that one meeting. Why? For many of us, our teaching was done for the week, so it gave us time to focus on our research or our creative activities or our planning. Fridays are also challenging for conference travel, so there are a lot of absences, less engaged, hurried staff makes for, perhaps less time spent really thinking about agenda items. Not saying we were irresponsible, just saying this time wasn't necessarily fostering our best. So then we moved meetings to the middle of the week, Wednesdays from noon to 2. So in some ways, this was really helpful, right? So you're not feeling yanked away from writing or creative activity. But here's the thing, many of us taught until 11:50, so that was a hustle to wrap up class, respond to student questions, grab lunch, and make it to the meeting. No transition time can be hard. But what was also stressful, many of us then taught at 2. So again, no transition time, trying to run out of a class. If you had a large lecture like I did at 2 o'clock, I would immediately run over and be met by 100 students in the hallway waiting for me to unlock the door. I hadn't even had the chance to use a restroom in the last 2 hours. So what does this mean? It means that the last 15 to 20 minutes, I'm watching the clock, hoping we're wrapping up ASAP, possibly not even asking questions I have simply for the sake of time. And here's the thing, I wasn't the only one in that position. So what do we do now? We meet from 12:30 to 1:30 on Wednesdays. Our once 2-hour Friday meeting has morphed to a 1-hour midweek meeting. Those who teach until noon get there comfortably with time to grab lunch, comfort break. Those who teach at 2 have a moment to do the same, get across campus, set up the room, answer questions. But what else happens? We're engaged. We're asking questions. We're raising concerns. You have our full attention. Formal leaders out there, you have the power to alter your work environment in ways to encourage positive behavior while also discouraging negative behavior. Now we're going to look at our third support beam. Recognize that if we want our people to meet certain expectations, we must take deliberate steps to teach them how. Again, this sounds like a no-brainer, but I think when we spend a little more time here, you're going to recognize that a lot of times we make assumptions rather than explaining our expectations and then offering others a roadmap of how to get there. This support beam makes me think of an interaction I had before with the Chief Technology Officer. He told me he hated that none of his team members could jump in and present teamwork on his behalf if he were out or had another commitment. He was angry, like raging, my friends. Okay, so you have this clear goal. You want team members to be adept presenters and be able to speak to team matters, right? This is feasible. So I asked him when team members had low stakes opportunities to present information to get their feet wet. And he said, well, they don't have any because right now I do it all. So a couple things going on here. That Chief Technology Officer felt that as the leader of the group, it was his role to present group efforts to others. Sure, perhaps when he's new in the role, assimilating to the organization, maybe integrating a new vision or initiative, but all the speaking requests, all department visit requests, nope. Naturally, if he spent his whole workday in and out of presentations and department visits, no wonder he's cranky, right? Representing the department is one small aspect of his role, but what's worse, what does his behavior implicitly communicate to the team? You aren't capable of this, or I don't believe that you're capable of this. Ouch. Point being, leadership requires frequent check-ins. What's working right now is not likely to continue to serve you in the same way in 6 months or a year or 18 months. Consider what goals you have for your team and for them as individuals. Talk to your employees. Instead of guessing what skills they want to develop, ask them. Between your vision for the group coupled with individuals' goals, you should have the ingredients to make a formative plan with specific targets and stepping stones. Returning to the Chief Technology Officer we were talking about before. We worked together, we made a plan to help him relinquish some control over disseminating that departmental information. We also created a really nice on-ramp for his employees. He used departmental funds to purchase professional development materials from Toastmasters International. If you're not familiar, it's an educational organization that focuses on primarily teaching public speaking. Additionally, during a team meeting, members shared aspects of their work they would be most interested in presenting to others. So those who are focused on troubleshooting could shine there. Those who focused on security could better speak to those aspects of the team's work. It really didn't take much effort to come together and make a new plan once a leader had recognized what he was doing just wasn't working anymore. This leads us to our fourth and final support beam, is this idea of having a system for responding immediately and consistently to inappropriate behavior while recognizing the importance of reinforcing positive behavior. I love so many elements about this final support beam. Too often, we look over the positive. We don't praise it. It doesn't mean that we don't see it or that we don't appreciate it. But since it doesn't require our immediate attention like inappropriate behavior, it's often taken for granted. What does that communicate to your employees who are engaging in these pro-social behaviors that are so important to our team functioning? Also, while it is essential to immediately and consistently address negative behaviors, well, sometimes we gloss over that too. We might notice, of course, right? It's not that we don't see it, but it might be more comfortable to turn to look away and hope that this behavior is going to course correct over time. Well, that may be more comfortable, my friends. It is far more destructive. Let's think of an employee who's consistently late. In one of my previous posts, I started at 7 a.m. I unlocked the office and I was there to field any visitors, any inquiries, any calls for help until the rest of the team came in, ranging from between 8 and 9 a.m. But what if I were consistently late? This was when I was working in the marketing and communication department of a large metropolitan hospital. Doctors would frequently stop in right at 7 a.m. to check in on any PR needs. Maybe it was to fact check an article for the newsletter or to touch base about a speaking engagement. You name it. But this time was helpful for them because it was before rounds, before appointments, oftentimes before surgeries. If I weren't there on time, this would have damaged our department's credibility and would have made it harder for them to trust us and to say yes to future requests. In this role, I had a great relationship with my manager, and I think it would have been really challenging for her to have to talk to me about this seriously, to document it if necessary because of that relationship. But here's an aside, folks. I think part of that positive relationship stemmed from me being responsible. But again, we're exploring a hypothetical here. What would it have said to my peers if I weren't communicated with in a way that they would have been? It smells of favoritism, and that really can do a number on a team. On a previous episode, we talked about a manager who denied an employee's request for time off to care for two of her nephews while another was undergoing surgery. But the manager denied it because the children were not hers biologically. Yet the same manager let a peer leave when she had inadvertently backed over her cat on the way to work. Both situations require care and concern, but we need to be consistent. Caregiving as a whole should be respected. So the takeaway with these counterproductive behaviors, with these negative behaviors, immediately and consistently. Now let's go back to reinforcing positive behaviors. This is key. My friends, if we are really practiced at doing this, I am certain, like virtually guarantee, that you are going to have fewer instances of having to address counterproductive or otherwise inappropriate behavior. Why? Why and how am I able to go so far as to virtually guarantee this? When we work to cultivate a workplace environment purposefully engineered to allow us to grow and succeed, from our manager role modeling desired behaviors to us receiving praise or acknowledgement for our positive contributions, that is cyclical. We observe how we should act. We have the space to practice those behaviors. and then we're recognized for doing so successfully. This serves as effective feedback to keep on keeping on this way. Then we're also role modeling these pro-social behaviors for others. To act in another way is to be an outlier, is to perform in a way that is counter to the expectations of the group. If the manager addresses this behavior quickly, it's likely to course correct. And if not, well, this employee is likely to self-select out. Why? Because they can see it's not a good fit. With this scaffolding in place, these support structures, these guidelines, these boundaries, we are positioned to be successful, to consider what it means to be respectful, responsible, and safe. But a quick recap. How do we carve out this positive environment that we want so badly? Number one, we're going to use positive strategies to develop desired behaviors. Want people to be kind to one another? Model it, praise it, create space and opportunities for engagement and connection. 2, focus on changing the environment in ways that support positive behavior and discourage negative behavior. What's working? What isn't working so well? What behaviors do we absolutely love that our people are doing? And which, well, are downright irritating. This is a great starting point for considering what changes, small or large, could help to craft the environment that you're looking for. Number 3, recognize that if we want our people to meet certain expectations, we must take deliberate steps to teach them how. We've all heard the phrase, "I'm not a mind reader," before, and this was used to describe the importance of communicating needs and expectations clearly within interpersonal relationships. Same rings true in the organizational setting, my friends. Employees don't necessarily know what you expect from them. We can't be angry when our team members aren't jumping out of their seats to volunteer to lead presentations, when we ourselves make a point of telling them how many we're doing daily. Have a desired destination in mind? We'll make a plan. How do we go from where we are to where we want to be? What skills are needed? What other resources? The 4th, have a system for responding immediately and consistently to inappropriate behavior while recognizing the importance of reinforcing positive behavior. Let's say you're cooking dinner and you end up with a pretty deep gash on your finger. Ow! Well, you rinse it, you bandage it, and you go about your night. Bandage wiggles off while you're sleeping. No biggie, it's not bleeding anymore. Then you use the bathroom, you drop a kid off at school. Swing by the office, grocery store after work. A few days later, that little cut is throbbing. Why is this little annoying thing still bothering me, you think? Fast forward, that cut is infected and you need antibiotics. Certainly everything's going to be fine, but have we taken a bit more time to clean and disinfect the cut, kept our eye on it a bit more keenly the first few days? Then maybe we wouldn't have had to go to the doctors. Maybe we wouldn't need antibiotics. It wouldn't have brought you so much pain. Yeah, you see the connection. Things that seem tiny on the surface can morph and evolve, bringing new issues and concerns with them. Address inappropriate behavior immediately, consistently, same rules for everyone. And the positive, you see it, you say it. Let's commit to that. You see the positive, reinforce it by naming it, calling attention to it, letting your team members know that you notice them. Jen, you're really doing an incredible job with those reports. Thank you for helping us to shine. Or Rodrigo, you facilitated such an effective meeting. Thank you for being so prepared and helping us in this way. So now that we've looked at those support beams, and my friends, I've got to tell you, I also picked those up from 2nd grade curriculum night. Thank you, teachers. You are amazing and giving me so much hope for the employees, leaders, problem solvers, innovators, and creators of tomorrow. You truly are incredible. So now that we have those support beams in place, we are going to look at how to communicate in ways that are respectful, responsible, and safe. So when we think of respectful and we tie that to leadership, certainly there are many ways in which we can consider this. But today I want to focus on inclusion, and the way that we'll do that is to consider how to lead and connect with those who are in different ages or stages than yourself. With many electing to work well into their 70s, there's a good chance members from 4 generations may find themselves working shoulder to shoulder. Certainly, this brings a wealth of benefits, such as different perspectives and opportunity for enhanced mentoring, but it can also introduce some challenges in the form of connecting across ages and stages. First, it is important to note that researchers continue to point out similarities across generations in the workplace. So some scholars have conducted empirical research and found no generational differences. Others, like Menzel and Lester in 2014, they did a study with members from Generation Y, Generation X, and baby boomers, and found that the cohorts were more alike than they were different when it came to 7 out of 10 work values. The biggest difference the researchers found was that career advancement tended to be more strongly valued by members of Generation Y, in contrast to baby boomers or Generation X employees. In terms of other differences, some of my colleagues in the communication field, O'Connor and Rail, they found that millennials place a higher value on personally meaningful work and are more likely to consider the benefits package in contrast to salary alone than members of previous generations. I've also conducted some research in this area, and I found that millennials tend to expect and appreciate more frequent and more detailed feedback from their leader and from other high-status actors. So we've looked at ages. Now I think it's important that we also consider how someone's career stage can influence how we demonstrate our respect to them. In addition to considering an employee's age or generational cohort, it's also important to consider their stage and their position. That is, a 45-year-old who recently switched industries is likely to encounter many of the same challenges a 22-year-old employee encounters. In a national study, SMS research advisors considered how career and position stage impacts employee engagement. Participants were considered in 4 different stages. So we had our newbies. These are folks who had 3 or fewer years on the job. Then we had our straddlers, 4 to 7 years on the job, our seasoned employees, 8 to 10 years, and our sages, 11 or more years. These researchers found that each stage had distinct needs, which could be addressed by the way in which their peers and their leader communicated with them. Those newest to the position, our newbies, need to feel engaged in the work. They need to feel accepted within the organization. The goal of this stage, how we demonstrate our respect, is to make sure they feel supported. Leaders can do this by being mindful of giving newbies additional individual attention and pairing them with a peer mentor. How do we give respect and demonstrate respect to our straddlers? Researchers point out that a team focus is especially important for straddlers so they can continue to feel involved and begin to develop and exercise their leadership skills. Members of our seasoned cohort, they might feel re-energized by picking up new projects or being encouraged to innovate the work that they're doing or to pitch new ideas. Leaders and peers can demonstrate respect to the seasoned employee by reaffirming their contributions and how they make a difference at the group and the organizational level. For sages, our friends who've been in organizations 11 plus years, this was the final career stage and they're focused on legacy building. This stage then becomes about giving the sage employee the latitude to consider how to leave the organization better off than when they entered it. So, of course, respectful means using inclusive language and being intentional with our communication and our behavior. But it also means being mindful of the differences that are likely to present in our workplaces, right? Whether that is an employee at a different age, in a different generational cohort, or at a different stage of their career. We can demonstrate that respect to them in different ways, but in ways that meet them where they are. So now we're going to look at responsible. Just like there are many ways in which to apply the lens of respectful to leading, same is the case with responsible. But today I'd like us to consider responsible in terms of setting and navigating the course of the work group. We're talking training and development, resource management, and actively planning for the future. A large aspect of a formal leader's role is administrative. Bear with me. Know that I do not mean this in a negative way. Many of the hardest working people, the unsung heroes of organizations, are administrative assistants. The way I'm thinking about administrative here is in terms of strategic thinking, decision-making, and planning. And this is hard, heady work that never ends. And that's how we see responsible coming into play. In previous episodes, we've talked about the fact that if formal leaders want to be successful, they need to manage relationships, they need to manage resources, and manage perceptions of both relationships and resources. Our employees are savvy. They might not voice concerns, they might not voice these observations, but due to the social nature of work and workplaces, it is very easy to develop usually fairly accurate opinions about the quality of the relationship our manager shares with each employee. Responsible then means being very intentional about workgroup practices and consistent with communication. This ties directly into the scaffolding and these support beams we discussed earlier. If we want to foster a specific workgroup culture, an engaged, always evolving, supportive one, for example, then we need to model this behavior and provide specific steps for our employees to do so successfully. For example, this may mean being transparent about how much of the budget is available for personal development. Whether it's training, attending a conference, or giving employees funds to purchase a book or a webinar. Manager may ask employees to submit proposals or may provide funds on a rotating quarterly basis. If you value a supportive work group, then we could ask employees who are really shining in an area to lead a lunch and learn about that skill. For example, Hadley, you are so good at pitching clients. I'm really impressed. I learn from you at each pitch, and I know your teammates will too. Can you walk us through how you prepare for these pitches? Then, if our group has funds to order lunch, it can also double as a chance to socialize informally, to bolster those interpersonal relationships while highlighting exemplary work by Hadley and allowing the team to grow a skill collaboratively. Win, win, win. Responsible applies to today, the immediate future, the next few months, and longer-term planning as well. This is where it can get tricky. I've worked with managers that will say, I won't be here that long. I have my eyes on the director role. Or as soon as I hit that 2-year mark, I'm going to start looking. That is well and fine. You do you. I will never discourage an employee for abdicating for themselves or their goals. But I will stop formal leaders when they're shirking part of their duties. Leaders are future-oriented, whereas managers focus on the present. Leaders are setting a vision for what is next, thinking strategically about where the unit or organization is today and what it can reasonably grow into in the future. Leaders leave a legacy. They leave the department or the organization better than how they found it. This is a perfect segue to our final leadership focus, safe. This is the one I had to think about for a bit. Respectful, responsible, of course. Easy peasy, right? Safe, well, of course I want a safe workplace, but a safe leader? And yes, of course, that's my natural inclination. I want a safe leader. But what does that mean? And then here's the other thing. Sometimes safe gets a bad rap, like playing it safe, meaning no calculated risks. So let's dive into this further. Prevention of injury. For those of you who work in a shop or another dangerous environment, my first responders out there, for example, this has very literal, very tangible outcomes. For those of you in other industries, this might not quite land, right? Like, But think about prevention of emotional injuries. Think of a work environment where you can brainstorm freely without the fear of feeling like innovative ideas will be met with scorn or with laughter. Think of a work environment where your leader is there to provide support, whether it is to listen, to brainstorm, to monitor a situation when it's a challenging client, and a workplace where your leader escalates concerns when needed, making sure you and your team members feel safe and protected to do the work you were hired for. This makes me think of one physician that I used to work with when I worked in the healthcare setting. It was really challenging to work with. He was certainly an expert in his field, an innovator, but otherwise really just kind of an ass. I'm sorry, but there is no better way to put it. For example, after multiple attempts to welcome him to the department, offer him something to drink, ask him to take a seat while our chief marketing officer wrapped up her previous meeting, they were all met with silence. He then informed the chief marketing officer that he doesn't talk to assistants. So, after rotating through a few points of contact, all of whom reported feeling disrespected, unheard, and generally uncomfortable, to put it mildly, after working with this client, the chief marketing officer became his first and only point of contact with our department. This was the only client she took on. Our policy was for senior marketing communication specialists to lead these various service lines, connect with her on strategic matters, but she said she wasn't going to let us be treated this poorly. It's not what we signed up to do. So she led this effort. She also reported these instances to the chief medical officer and the CEO as well. And oftentimes she'd have the chief medical officer sit in with her in the meetings that she led with this individual. Leaders integrate safety measures. Even when we aren't in a position to incur bodily harm, it doesn't mean that we should feel like it's okay to leave work with some bumps and bruises, figuratively speaking. The final aspect of SAFE I want us to consider is the notion of preventing other consequences or harm caused. Consequences. This is really important for our leaders out there to consider. At the helm, it's your job to steer the ship. It's your job to consider what lies ahead, to help to remove or circumvent any obstacles that you can see from that position. So maybe we have an employee who's getting a lot better at public speaking, but he's not quite at the place we need him in order to MC this big event. Instead of throwing him out there and hoping it's a positive experience, or worse yet, chastising when it doesn't go well, it means stepping in to perform these responsibilities or enlisting the help of another. Better yet, we might ask this employee who's budding with his public speaking, welcome everyone, to introduce the MC. Maybe there are other opportunities to allow him some practice, but not put the weight of the entire event on his shoulders. This is being a leader, thinking of the well-being and physical and emotional safety of your employees. Our employees are not mind readers, nor are we as formal leaders. Communication is the vehicle to express expectations, to set boundaries, and to articulate your needs. This leads us to our communication focus of the week. I want us to think about I statements. I statements allow us to practice expressing how we feel or asking for what we need. Using I statements empower us to advocate for ourselves, and they're especially important in times of conflict. So let's explore why. First, I statements require us to reflect on how we're feeling. We aren't going to get too far if we open our mouth to say, I feel, long, awkward pause. So naturally, they give us a moment of reflection, a moment to check in and see how we are or how a certain decision or idea has struck us. I feel excited and hopeful about this meeting. Even taking the time to verbalize something like this can help to get our team on the same page, and in this case, generate additional collective energy. Well, I like I statements because by nature, they require a quick check-in and reflection to identify our feelings. They're also productive for navigating conflict or other tricky conversations. Let's say we went into that big meeting, and even though we discussed ahead of time that we were going to take the lead, it ended up feeling like we were playing a supporting role to our peer. Instead of sweeping those crummy feelings under the rug, again, remember unresolved conflict tends to grow legs and attach itself to other conversations and projects. It is important to have a conversation with our colleague. We can certainly start with, "You really pissed me off. You embarrassed me. You stole the show." Yeah, that's an option. I don't think you need a PhD to realize that that one's likely to end badly. What if we focused on I statements instead? I was hoping we could chat. I'm glad that meeting went so well, but I'm feeling a little frustrated about the way the presentation shook out. We discussed me taking the lead ahead of time, but in the meeting, I didn't feel like I had the chance to. So depending on our relationship with our colleague, we might add a bit more, such as focusing on the collective success of the department or focusing on that event or project, because this is a way to help us move through conflict rather than focusing on the person. In these settings, context is king. How does your peer respond? Do they immediately say, I know, I'm so sorry. When I get nervous, I just talk and talk. I will work on this. Or do they take responsibility in another way? I realized that part through, but it felt like the meeting was going really well. I didn't want to interrupt the flow. I'm really sorry I threw you that curveball. If your comments are met with disdain or just brushed off, you still have options. You may continue to use I statements to express how you feel. I appreciate your work in there, and I'm glad our meeting went well. I do best when I have a plan in place ahead of time, so it's important for me we're on the same page before and during future meetings. When you change the plans on the spot, I have a hard time remaining present and focused because I'm trying to predict where this meeting may go next. I statements allow us to acknowledge our feelings, present them in a way to advocate for ourselves, and in a manner that doesn't place the blame on others, but rather shows them how their behaviors affected us. My friends, all ranks, all industries, and tenures, mindfulness in speech and deed will go far. Are you leading? Are you leading well? Focus on being respectful, responsible, and safe in your thinking, your planning, your decision-making. Let respect, responsibility, and safety color your word choices and guide your behaviors. I want to challenge you to think about this, not just at work, but in your personal life too. Do you stop and recycle that plastic pop bottle you walk by in the parking lot, or is that just not your responsibility? Are you quick to chastise a child for a poor choice rather than them providing an option or an opportunity to learn from that error? How do you communicate to yourself? Do you respect your wealth of experiences and knowledge and you-ness? Or do you disrespect yourself, calling names and using put-downs? Formal leaders, you can mold your work group and environment. We provided detailed directions for and opportunities for employees to learn and enact our expectations. We reward the positive and immediately address any behavior that's detrimental to our group. You've got it, my friends. You're doing it, and you're doing it well. Next week on the Communicative Leader, Leadership Development. This is a frequently asked question. How do I keep growing as a leader? What does a skill look like? How often should I be doing something to improve my leadership communication skills? I've got you, my friends. Next week, we'll consider how some of your individual strengths and traits set you up for success and other ways in which you can continue to evolve. All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on the Communicative Leader.